They told us the NVA wouldn't stand and fight. They told us Charlie was just guerrillas hiding in villages, planting rice paddies by day and booby traps by night. But when we crossed into the DMZ in July of 1966, we found out how wrong they were. Operation Hastings wasn't a search and destroy mission. It was the moment America realized this war had just changed forever. My name is Corporal Daniel Reyes, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, Hotel Company. I was 21 years old when they dropped us into the Songon Valley. I grew up in El Paso, Texas. Joined the Corps because my old man served in Korea. Figured I'd do my time, come home, maybe open a garage. But nothing prepares you for the jungle. The way it breathes, the way it watches you, the way it swallows men whole and never gives them back. By July 15th, 1966, I had been in country for 4 months. 4 months of patrols through rice paddies, 4 months of mosquitoes, dysentery, and the constant feeling that someone was always behind you. Then command told us something big was coming. Intelligence had spotted movement near the DMZ. Not Viet Cong, not local guerrillas, North Vietnamese Army regulars. Thousands of them, crossing into the south. Operation Hastings was launched on July 15, 1966. It was the largest Marine operation of the war up to that point. The mission was clear: locate and destroy elements of the 324th B NVA Division operating in the demilitarized zone. Over 8,000 Marines and South Vietnamese soldiers would be committed to this fight, but the terrain was the enemy's greatest ally. Quang Tri Province sat just below the 17th parallel, the invisible line dividing north from south. July in Vietnam meant monsoon season was in full force. The jungle there was unlike anything we'd seen further south. Triple canopy forests so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground. Elephant grass taller than a man. Rivers that flooded without warning when the rains came. The temperature hovered around 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That doesn't sound terrible until you factor in the humidity, 90 to 95%. The air was so thick with moisture it felt like breathing through a wet blanket. Your uniform was soaked within minutes. Not from rain, from your own sweat that had nowhere to evaporate. The jungle trapped everything: heat, moisture, sound, and men. Monsoon rains came every afternoon like clockwork, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 6 hours straight. The trails turned to rivers of mud. Your boots sank ankle deep with every step. The leeches came out during the rains. They dropped from leaves onto your neck. They crawled up your legs through your boot eyelets. You'd find them attached to places you didn't even know you had. And the NVA knew every trail, every stream, every hiding place. They had been preparing for us. We inserted by helicopter on the morning of July 18th, LZ Crow, a small clearing carved into the mountainside by naval gunfire. I remember the door gunner screaming over the noise, 30 seconds. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip my M14, the standard issue rifle for Marines at that time. The M16 was coming, but most of us still carried the older, heavier M14. We hit the ground running, fanned out into the tree line. Standard procedure. But nothing about this mission would be standard. Our orders were simple: push north along the Songman River, locate enemy positions, call in airstrikes, destroy everything. My platoon was 32 men strong. Lieutenant Harold Patterson led us. Good officer. Quiet. The kind of leader who carried his own gear and never asked you to do something he wouldn't do himself. We moved single file through the jungle. Point man out front with a machete and his rifle. Then the squad leader, then the rest of us, spaced 10 meters apart, so one grenade couldn't take out half the platoon. Each man carried between 60 and 80 pounds of gear. Rucksack with sea rations for 3 days, 8 quarts of water minimum, because resupply was never guaranteed. 200 rounds of ammunition for the M14, hand grenades, smoke grenades for marking positions, claymore mines, poncho and poncho liner for sleeping, and trenching tool for digging fighting positions, first aid kit, insect repellent that never really worked, salt tablets to prevent heat cramps, and letters from home tucked inside helmet bands. The weight crushed you. The humidity drained you. Every 100 meters felt like a mile. We stopped every hour to drink water and check for leeches. Doc Morrison, our Navy corpsman, treated 3 men for heat exhaustion before noon, their faces pale, vomiting, barely able to stand. We had to leave them at a rally point for medvac. By noon, we had covered less than 2 kilometers. The jungle was that thick. Every step was a negotiation with vines, roots, and wait-a-minute bushes that grabbed at your gear and slowed you down. The canopy blocked all breeze. The air below was stagnant, heavy. It smelled of rotting vegetation and wet earth. That's when Point Man signaled. Fist raised. Everyone froze. Contact. He had found a trail. Fresh footprints. Dozens of them. Boot prints. Not the sandal prints of Vietcong. These were NVA regulars wearing canvas and rubber boots supplied by China and the Soviet Union. Lieutenant Patterson moved forward. Hand signals only. No talking. We spread out along the ridgeline, weapons ready. My heart was pounding so loud I thought the enemy could hear it. Then I heard it. A sound I'll never forget. A single whistle. High-pitched, echoing through the valley. That was the NVA signal to initiate an ambush. The jungle exploded. Muzzle flashes everywhere. The distinctive crack of AK-47s on full automatic, the heavier thump of RPD machine guns, RPG rockets screaming through the trees and detonating against tree trunks. Men screaming, dirt and debris flying. I hit the ground so hard I knocked the wind out of myself, bullets snapping over my head, leaves and bark raining down. The NVA had set up an L-shaped ambush, classic tactic taught to them by Chinese advisors. They let our point element walk right into the kill zone, then opened up from 2 directions at once. Crossfire, the deadliest kind. Private First Class Tommy Hendricks was hit first, took a round through the shoulder. He was screaming for a corpsman, but Doc Morrison was pinned down 30 meters away behind a fallen log. Moving in that fire was suicide. I crawled forward on my belly, dirt in my mouth, blood pounding in my ears. I could see muzzle flashes in the tree line ahead, maybe 50 meters. The NVA were well concealed in spider holes and behind thick vegetation. You couldn't see them until they fired. Lieutenant Patterson was on the PRC-25, the standard field radio that weighed almost 24 pounds with battery. He was calling for fire support, but the jungle was so thick, the aircraft couldn't identify our position. They couldn't distinguish us from the enemy. Danger close fire missions required exact coordinates, and in that chaos, with maps soaked from humidity and compasses thrown off by the iron-rich soil, exact coordinates were nearly impossible. We were on our own. Sergeant Williams grabbed me by the collar. "Reyes, get on that 60. Jefferson's down." I low-crawled to Jefferson's position. He was slumped against a tree, eyes open, staring at nothing. A round had gone through his throat. The M60 machine gun was still in his hands, hot from firing. The M60 was our main suppressive fire weapon, belt-fed, 7.62 millimeters, capable of firing 500 rounds per minute. But it weighed 23 pounds without ammunition, and it ate through belts fast. I pried the weapon free, loaded a fresh 100-round belt from Jefferson's body, and I opened up on that tree line with everything I had. The barrel was burning through the asbestos heat glove, smoke pouring from the receiver, but I kept firing. Short bursts like they taught us, 6 to 9 rounds at a time to prevent overheating. But in combat, you forget training. I fired longer bursts, sweeping the tree line, trying to suppress their positions long enough for our wounded to get to cover. I don't know how long the firefight lasted. It felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes. Time compresses and expands in combat. You exist in a bubble where nothing else matters except the next second.
Eventually, the enemy fire slackened, then stopped. The NVA had pulled back. They never stayed to fight to the last man. That wasn't their doctrine. They hit hard, inflicted casualties, and melted into the jungle before air support could arrive. They would live to fight again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. When we finally regrouped, we'd lost 4 men killed, 8 more wounded seriously enough to require medevac. Tommy Hendricks survived, but the round had shattered his collarbone and severed nerves. He'd never have full use of that arm again. We found 17 NVA bodies in the tree line. Blood trails and drag marks suggested many more had been wounded or killed and carried away. The NVA were meticulous about recovering their dead. They knew American body counts drove policy. Fewer bodies meant reports of smaller engagements. But it didn't feel like a victory. 4 of my brothers were dead, for a piece of jungle we'd abandoned the next day. Operation Hastings lasted until August 3, 1966. 19 days of brutal jungle fighting across Quang Tri Province. Multiple battalions engaged in firefights daily. Helicopters shot down by heavy machine gun fire. Artillery coordinates miscalculated because of terrain. Resupply drops lost in the canopy. When it was over, official reports claimed over 800 NVA killed. American casualties were 126 killed in action and 448 wounded. But those numbers only tell part of the story. Dozens more were evacuated for non-combat injuries, heat casualties, malaria, jungle rot infections that turned small cuts into gaping wounds, immersion foot from days of slogging through wet terrain. But the real lesson wasn't in the numbers. Operation Hastings proved that the North Vietnamese Army wasn't just a collection of guerrilla fighters, they were trained soldiers, disciplined, well-equipped with Soviet and Chinese weapons, willing to stand and fight conventional battles. The 324th B Division we faced was a regular Army unit with regimental structure, heavy weapons companies, and coordinated tactics. The war we thought we were fighting wasn't the war we were actually in. Command expected hit-and-run guerrillas. They found an organized army willing to mass thousands of troops for major engagements. This changed everything. After Hastings, the Marines established permanent positions along the DMZ. Khe Sanh, Con Thien, Jolin, names that would become synonymous with suffering in the years to come. I rotated home in November of '66, caught a Freedom Bird out of Da Nang, a chartered commercial aircraft filled with men who had survived their 13-month tour. Nobody spoke much. We just stared out the windows, watched the coast of Vietnam disappear beneath the clouds. I thought I was leaving the jungle behind, but the jungle never really leaves you. 40 years later, I still wake up at night, sweating, heart pounding, hearing that whistle. Operation Hastings is often forgotten, overshadowed by later battles like Khe Sanh in '68 and the Tet Offensive. But for the men who fought there, for the 126 Americans who never came home, it was everything. They were sons, brothers, husbands, friends. The average age of the combat infantrymen in Vietnam was 19 years old. 19! Boys who had been in high school 2 years earlier were carrying M60 machine guns through triple canopy jungle against a determined professional army. They walked into that jungle not for politics or ideology. They walked in because the man next to them was walking in. They fought for each other. They died for each other. And they deserve to be remembered. This story is dedicated to the Marines of the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines, and all who served in Operation Hastings. Their names are etched on Panel 9 of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington. Black granite reflecting the faces of those who come to remember. Some wars are won with victories, others are measured in survival. And in the jungles of Quang Tri Province and the summer of 1966, survival was victory enough.